have to take responsibility. The reason that I was in prison wasn't because my dad beat me, but the predominant fear I had.
What if you turn hardship into greatness, anger into serenity? Everything changes. Make your life a masterpiece. Welcome, I'm Yanik, your host, and now joining me, Ken Miller. Ken Miller is the author of Becoming Ken. Have you ever wondered what it is like to become Ken, or really becoming your true self? And really why you should go on this path and really look for who you truly are, and actually how to transform hardship into a source of growth. Welcome, Ken Miller, to the show. It's such a treat to have you and really to learn more about you, your outstanding book, and your outstanding journey.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Yanik. I'm looking forward to the discussion, to the discourse, and let's have some fun. So, thank you again for inviting me.
To start, let's introduce yourself in only one powerful sentence.
I am true to self.
That is really, really powerful, and it really speaks volumes, really. Reading your book, Becoming Ken, because that is a story that really you can only really learn in a Hollywood blockbuster, really. It's a true American story, so I really love it. And the fact that you got accepted by the most distinguished schools, such as Harvard, and then choose another Ivy League school, Dartmouth College, but then things went a little bit off. And so we really want to decipher what actually happens and why it happens. And in doing so, we really have to go back a little bit to your childhood, really your beginnings. So give us a taste how it was like to really grow up as Ken Miller.
Very good question. So originally, I didn't grow up as Ken Miller, and it's part of me becoming Ken. I had a different name, and that's very interesting. I was what they call a foster child, so I went through the foster care system. My mother was a teenage runaway, white female, and my dad was a black married pimp and drug dealer in New York City. They engaged in a relationship, and I was the byproduct. And so my mother put me up for adoption at birth because mixed children, and that's what they call a mixed race child, was not very common at all in 1962. And she's a teenage girl. So I was put up and I went through foster homes for 6 years. So originally I had a different name. And then I acquired the last name of Miller when I was 6 years old. And that's through a formal process in front of the court. And I was adopted and became Miller. So, but I knew when I was 4 and 5 that I was a foster child. And that damaged me in a way because it had a sense of my self esteem. If I was wanted, if I was wantable, if I was lovable, I wouldn't have been thrown away because that's the way I perceived as a 4 or 5 year old kid. I was thrown away. And because I knew I didn't have a mother, I knew that. You know that through the foster care system. And so, I was adopted, and I was very, very fortunate in that my mother, who adopted me, Irene Miller, was an individual that really emphasized education. So she taught me how to read when I was 6 years old, fell in love with reading. and did very, very well, and especially the humanities. And so by the time I was 17, I was accepted to Harvard. I chose to go to Dartmouth, but I was a National Merit Scholar, as they would call at that time.
Thank you so much for sharing your beginning. When you talk about this and think about this, how does it make you feel looking back, being a foster child?
How does it make me feel now? I feel great about it because I understand it. I'm true. My fundamental, basic emphasis in life is to understand truth. What's real? What are the facts? What is real? And it's very, very difficult or impossible as a child because we don't understand adult motives. We don't understand adult behavior, but we're dealing with adults as a child and we see it through a child's eyes. So, and then we can become an adult and we can choose to still not understand or see what the truth was about past experiences and or events. But I spent years, literally years, looking at my past, my childhood, to try to get to some understanding, especially of why I did what I did. And I'm talking about the negative, what we call inimical things that I did to me and to society and others. And I have a very, very good understanding. I have a very good understanding of motives of others. I have a very good understanding of, in fact, probably a 100% understanding of my motives. And then others I can, through my experience, understand, and also speaking with them, and then speaking with other individuals to understand why did that person do that? What were they thinking, male or female, to do this? I understand why my mom put me up for adoption. I understood why my father was angry at me and beat me. I understand why my dad shot my mom 6 times. I understand why this individual abandoned me. I understand all that today. And because I understand it, I can do another trait, which is acceptance. I can accept that that's a truth and therefore I can move on. Does it mean I forgive? Yeah. Yeah, I've forgiven everyone. Does it mean I forget? No. No. I still remember. I remember but I don't what it does, this is the beautiful thing, Yanik. What it does today is when I bring up those past memories or events or experiences, it does not bring up a negative emotion. I'm not angry. I'm not resentful. I'm not regretful. I'm not in fear when I bring up my father, when I bring up the abandonment, when I bring up whatever the events that have happened throughout my series of or succession of events throughout my life. I don't have to bring up that negative emotion. Predominantly, I use it to share and to help others. I've been there, I've done that. I've experienced grief, experienced loss, I've experienced this, and this. And therefore I can share my experience. Let's see if we can help, or maybe I can assist you in walking through it yourself.
But it's impressive given the fact that you grew up having the awareness of being a foster child, then got adopted and ultimately really succeeded. What do you think was one of the most important eh, takeaways that your mother who adopted you gave you in order to succeed, really excel throughout the system, really the school system?
Well, the number one thing that she gave me was unconditional love. That's number one, period. Everything else is just details. There's a great book called The Signal and the Noise. And what it talks about is what is the signal? What's the important? What is the alpha? And then there's everything else is noise. And one of the things with maturity and discernment, we can understand better if we so choose what's the signal, what's the noise. Well, the signal for my mother is that you are true an adoptive child that went through foster care for 6 years, but I am going to give you unconditional love. So once I had that feeling, something I wanted so badly, when I'm approached to do certain things, I was willing to do it. My mother had to teach me how to read. I could not read when I was adopted. I could not tell time. I could not tie my shoes. I couldn't read or write. And so she taught me that the first 3 or 4 months. But she did it with love. Didn't mean I didn't cry because I wanted to play. I'm 6 years old, but I learned it through phonetics cards and fell in love with reading, fell in love with reading. So, again, what did she do? She taught me how to read. That was and then gave me the gift of education. My mother was going to school when I got adopted to get her master's and postmaster's. When my dad shot her, she was working on her doctorate. So, as a Black woman growing up in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, that was incredible. There weren't a lot of Black women with doctorates, let alone with masters from Columbia's Teachers College, Ivy League, one of the best schools of education at the advanced level. And she got her master's and got postmasters and was working on her doctorate. But that got sort of curtailed due to the shooting.
Really, this is a story that is really, really profound because basically all the odds were against you and really your family, right? What do you think was it? You say that clearly love, right? So, what do you think made you push through to really go further, go into these schools and also excel because you still had the backpack of the history, and today we know with intergenerational trauma that's also a real thing. So what was it really that ultimately, love on one aspect, education, what else do you think was pivotal in order to get you through the school system so successfully?
I had individuals that believed in me. I had teachers. I had counselors. I had a teacher, Mrs. Stoddard, in high school, and she saw that I had this intelligence. It's intelligence. Okay. I had Mrs. McKenzie, who was my counselor. If anybody got me into Dartmouth, it was her because she identified me in 10th grade and said, "You can do great things." And she doesn't say that to a lot of students, but she saw that in me. As far as I know, I was maybe one of two of the only students of color that she was the head counselor. She didn't even have a caseload. She didn't literally work with, but she saw something in me. And so it behooved me to take that kindness, that belief in this, young black, kid and run with that. And this I hope doesn't come. Well, I don't really care how it comes across. I didn't see myself as super intelligent. I just knew I was smart. We just called it smart. I knew I was smart. I've been told I was smart from second grade. Remember, I learned how to read in first grade. By second grade, I was reading at the fifth grade level. Fifth grade level. 6 months later, I am a true believer that intelligence is you're born with intelligence, but it has to be released. If my mom hadn't taught me how to read, it wouldn't matter how innately intelligent I am. How do you know that, Ken? What proof do you have of that? The proof is my father, my biological father, impregnated 3 white teenage girls, okay, in New York, which in the 50s and 60s, again, is very unusual. My one sister is a retired professor, and my other sister is a teacher of English at the high school level. And then there's me that went to Dartmouth. Like I said, my sister has a master's and is a retired college professor. Do you know how unusual it is for 3 African Americans growing up in the 60s to have that level of education and intelligence. And we didn't know each other until 8 years ago. So to me, it's biological, but it still has to be released. We all had to be exposed to education. If I'd gone to school in Detroit, and I'm going to call it out because I did go to school in Detroit for like 3 months, it's a terrible school system. If I went to one of the poor schools in Georgia, where the black side of my family is from, I probably wouldn't have been. Do you know that until 1950, no black men went past the sixth grade in my family tree? None, none, zero. Never went past sixth grade. What happens if I had grown up in that environment, even though it's 20 years later? So again, it's a product of the environment, but it's a product also of innate intelligence. So anyway, one of my strengths is that I'm curious. I'm curious. I love to learn. I love information. I probably do something every day. I have read since 2004. I've read 1,100 books, nonfiction books, 1,100. Okay, I don't know what before because that's when I started tracking them. Was 2004. I write down every book I read. I rate them. I put a one sentence synopsis, the author, and how many pages.
Brilliant. I think for everyone who is really listening, you now gotta go now on Amazon or whatever you can get books and really get a copy of Becoming Ken. One black man's journey from Ivy League to prison and back, published by Thought Leaders Press 2025. Ken, just before we dive back
Mhm.
to the story, really to your
Mm.
adolescence,
Mhm.
I just want to ask you, how do you spend your day? When do you get up? And how does
Sure.
it make you feel when you get up? What do you do first?
Man, I am so excited to get up. I'm 62 years old, born in 1962.
Oh my
I
God,
get
you
up.
look so much younger.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Congrats, incredible.
You didn't see this gray hair? No.
Yeah.
So I I look so forward to the day. So I wake up usually around 5:30. Yeah, between 5 and 5:30. I work from home. I own 5 businesses. So I work from home. I'm in the office by 6 a.m. And I usually my best hours are morning. So probably about 6 to 11 or 12 are my best, my solids. I usually do most of my corporate work or most of my work for my companies. And then afternoons, I'll do podcasts. I'll still do some work. I'll go to the gym. I do that 4 days a week. I spend time with the grandchildren, things of that nature. But and then I usually wind up around 4 p.m. is when I'll wind down unless I have an evening meeting. So sometimes I have evening meetings, but that's somewhat rare. But it's usually a real solid 6 a.m. and I work 6 days a week. I usually will take off Saturday and do things with the family, with the wife. And then I will go sometimes to church on Sunday, but a lot of times I'm working to prepare for Monday.
That sounds great. Wonderful. I can really tell your energy, your purpose, your sense of purpose and meaning that you have, it really comes through. Really powerful, incredible story, really. Again, if you're listening, really go on the net. We'll put the link below, really. Becoming Ken, one black man's journey from Ivy League to prison and back again, published by Thought Leaders Press 2025. When you look back entering Dartmouth College,
Mhm.
how did it make you feel?
Interesting. That's an interesting question because again, so first of all, I tell people this all the time. I went into Dartmouth, I was broken. I was broken. I was damaged. I was damaged emotionally. So intellectually, I'm fine. I'm ready for Dartmouth. even though I did struggle a little bit for certain reasons, but I'm damaged emotionally. I'd come off a lot of violence in my home environment because my father was an alcoholic, a self-pitying alcoholic that did not want me, because he had already had 2 kids with his first wife. So they adopt me. I'm an only child, and my mom's giving me unconditional love. Well, he had all that love for my mother by himself. Now he has to share that love with me, and I don't think he was real open to that. Plus, I was a mama's boy, that's for sure. I hung out with my mom, and I think he thought that was weak. Okay, so I go off at age 17, very, very, very innocent, but broken. The last half of my senior year in high school, we literally hid out. My father and I got into a very violent altercation. Police were called, and I had to hide out from my father. That was my senior last half of my senior year, which is not not very nice. So I go to college. I'm again very innocent. I had never drank. I had a half a beer we call senior skip day up in my high school, Bartlett High School in Anchorage, Alaska, and I'd smoked weed like twice. And I remember going down the hall, September 1980, and the doors open to the dorm room, and they're smoking weed in there. And I'm like, I think I walked in there and said, "Isn't this like illegal?" And they just laughed at me. They thought that was the funniest thing they'd ever heard because they smoke a lot of weed in college. At least they did back in 1980. So anyway, I go in there, and I couldn't drive, had never had a girlfriend. I was wet behind the ears. And I'm from Alaska, and I'm a different person than most of the African Americans there. It was very different. Remember I said becoming Ken? I mean, I liked heavy metal music. I mean, I was a Van Halen, Black Sabbath, Led Zepp, um, you know, that was my bands, okay? Nazareth, Hair of the Dog was my first 8-track I ever got. So anyway, I'm weird. I got this jean jacket with all these heavy metal bands. I got a Jerry curl, which you may or may not know what that is. But whatever it was, it had gone out of style 2 years before on the East Coast. But I didn't know. I had never been to Dartmouth. I had never been around a prep. I didn't know what a prep was, and I was very envious of them because I thought they had it all together, prep students. And so I go in there very damaged, and I struggled emotionally, and so I went there and had some academic problems because I really did not know how to write at that level. I thought I did, but I really didn't. Because again, remember we're a factor of our environment. And I went to a public school in Anchorage, Alaska, and I'm going up against students that went to prep school, Phillips Exeter, Brooks School, Madeira, wherever they went to, Miss Porter's school, and they learn how to write at that level, and I didn't. But I learned pretty quick. Again, I learned quick. I remember I went to my first lecture. I know I'm going on a little bit. I went to my first lecture, and it was English 55, Pease and Paulson, professors Pease and Paulson. This is how my memory works. And they had the big board, and there's like 100 people in this lecture hall, and they used the word dichotomy and bifurcate. Can you believe I still remember those words 45 years later? Because I had no clue what those words meant. I had never seen those words before in my life. And I said to myself, we are not in Kansas anymore. And I said, ooh, I got work to do. So, anyway, that's when I went to college. But this is the key part of the college experience early on because I'm broken. I needed companionship, I needed a sense of belonging. And so I joined a fraternity and began drinking at the fraternity called Bonesgate, which I love dearly to this day. And within a month and a half of my first beer, I was a full blown alcoholic. True.
It really makes sense, obviously, and that we really see in the fundamental human needs that we seek to belong.
Mhm.
How do you today make somehow sense of and really get this belonging that we all need? That's a fundamental human need, right? So really, to zoom a little bit out today, how do you, what do you do specifically in order to connect, to feel like a sense of belonging? Because I think that's a big topic even today, even though like we live in this illusion of easily connecting, but somehow it's shallow. So what do you do to really to meet this fundamental need of having this sense of belonging, of connection?
It depends on what level that we're talking about. Let me explain what I'm saying here. There's a connection that's close into us, and that connection is my wife, my God, and my immediate family, and one one or two other black men that I'm very close to. Then I have a group outside of that. So I mentor. I've been mentoring for 15 years. I mentor young black men. I also have mentors, so I'm very close to them. I belong to many communities. I'm a very social person. You can probably tell. And there are communities I have founded, Men of Color and Development. I founded that. The AFP, African American Affinity Session or Section, I led that for years. AFP, Association of Fundraising Professionals, the consultants group, I started that. The Six Pillars, Black Men's Book Study and Discussion Group, I started that. I start groups, I start communities. The Pass It On mentor mentee group, I started that. So I have these communities outside. There's church, there's the anonymous programs. I'm a member of the anonymous programs because I'm in recovery. So there's multiple programs that I'm involved with. I go to meetings regularly. Then of course I have the gym. So I have, but this is a key component. At one point I thought everybody had to like me. Everybody had to like me. So I would put on masks in assumption that if I put this mask on, you will like me. I don't care anymore. I do not care. It's the least concerning thing if you like me or not. Because I realize that there are people who love me and there are people that like me. And I have this small group, I have a larger group outside that, and I have a much larger group. I have what, 6,000 people on my LinkedIn. I have 4 or 5,000 on Facebook. I have connections. I have a gamut of that. But I don't need for everybody to like me. And if you don't like me, I'm cool with that. Before I would like try to convince you to like me. I don't think you're into me. And I'm gonna bring this up. This is a good one, Yannick. The reason that's important is when you want everybody to like you, it makes it very difficult for you to say no. And one of the greatest traits as a businessman and as a human is the ability to say no. Well, if I say no, they won't like me. They won't let me play with them. They won't let me be a part of their group. And that was a hard one. I've just learned that one the last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, and I think that's really what makes you the person really that you are, right? On one hand, you are really someone who, to some extent, you lost yourself really to
Mhm,
find yourself, right?
mhm.
And it's a balancing act of not getting sucked up somehow and just running around, because we only have so much resources, right? And so that certainly challenges and takes a lot of courage to actually say no. And I really thank you that you say that, because I think everyone struggles with that. That's also something that, myself and really everyone is struggling, right? To say no, because ultimately we want to be kind, we want to be uplifting for people, and this can somehow feel a kind of an impediment. So, how do you say no in a good and empowering manner?
No. Not now. I appreciate the offer, but at this point, I'll pass. That's it.
Brilliant. I just want to come back and ask you and to unpack a little bit about the groups, because it's
Mm,
it's important that people actually know that, because we not everyone comes from the same background, and so it
mm.
really differs, right? So you mentioned, for example, that you have also one of the core groups really are black men, like three black mans. So unpack this a little bit, why this is so important also in terms of race, in order for you to connect deeply.
I have no problem talking about that. Again, it's not whether you like I was on a podcast the other day and they were like, why do you just work with black men? And I said, because I choose to. Again, whether you like it or not, that's on you. Okay. It was a decision I made consciously over time to work with just men. Number one, in the rooms of recovery, they say we have called sponsors. You should stay within your same sex to sponsor someone. So I understand the why behind that. And therefore, I just brought that over into my mentoring. So now we're just into men. I just want to work with men. The other thing I do that is out of respect to my wife, that I'm not on this deep conversation or call. Because when I mentor someone, I mentor the whole person, talking about the relationship with their partner. And I'm not going to be talking to a woman about her relationship with her husband or girlfriend, whoever it may be. Okay. And she knows that, my wife. And that's out of respect to our marriage and to her. Okay. So now I'm limited to men. Now, why just black men or men of color? The reason is because it is such a problem within the black male community. We have such a problem with black male role models and such a problem with father figures within the black, because we're locked up, we're drug addicts. And I'm just making, it's not even an assumption. I know the truth. I've been locked up 3 times. I've been in prison for years. So I've been around, and it's only men in those prisons, around a lot of men of color, Hispanic and black, who cannot assume the role, at least physically, of being a father, okay? Or choose not to assume that role for whatever reasons. We abandon our partners, we abandon our wives. Again, I did it. So I'm speaking from my truth. My first wife, I left her, just left her with the baby. I mean, that's poor behavior. But so anyway, so I know the difficulties we have. I know about the intergenerational trauma. I know about being emasculated as a black man. I know about lowest self-esteem as a black man. I know about the violence that we perpetrate on others, how we deal with anger, how we deflect onto innocent parties, because I've been there. I've done it, or I've been locked up with individuals that have done that. And again, and it really comes down to this, Yannick. The other main thing, I only have so much time. I mean, Yannick, I remember I just talk truth. I am a millionaire. I am a millionaire dollar wise. On paper, net asset position over $1 million. Okay, let's put that out the side. I make over a $500,000 a year. Let's put that off to the side. Okay. I also want to give that role model, and I don't have a problem saying it because you can't touch my money. Okay. But I let people know that and put that out there so other black men, I'm a 3 time convicted felon that's legally has made this. I own 5 businesses legally. And here you have an example of a black man that's done that and is willing to share with you everything that I know to get you to success, because I want your success, number one, as a man. I want your success as a husband. I want your success as a father. And I want your success financially. And I'll share anything that I can to help you do that. That's why I started mentoring 15 years ago. At one point, I was mentoring 29, but let's bring it back. Why just a black man? I only have so much capacity. You know how much I make. If I'm doing hourly with you, it's $300 an hour. 300. Well, I mentor 12 men right now. At one point, I had 29. I'm not even counting my groups I do, just one on one mentoring for free. It has always been free and will always will be free. Okay. For 15 years, I've been doing this. And so, what I'm saying is, I don't have the capacity to do men, women, white, Asian. I don't have the capacity. I can only do, I got 12 and I got people waiting, would love to. Remember, I had 29. At one point, I had to let go because I needed to write this book I just wrote. So last summer, July of last summer, I had to talk to each of those men one on one and say, hey, I'll always be there. If you want to give me a call, great. But the explicit mentoring that I will do, because we have like a schedule, and it is a schedule. Every 3 months, we meet for an hour. I can't do that with you any longer. And all of them, and I will repeat this, all of them were open to that and say, hey, man, I'm so appreciative of the time we have had and I wish you so much luck on your book coming up.
It's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this, because it's important, because it's not something that that's always evident, right? And
Mhm.
it really makes sense. It really makes sense, and it's great that you're straightforward and you're really interested in the truth. And I think that's why you are such a great role model. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, or
Mhm.
whatever. So thank you really for sharing this. It makes sense. It really does.
That
So
makes sense.
let's go back. Of course,
Right.
let's go back to your hardship. I mean, ending up on the street, being homeless. That is, as you describe in your book, it's just the worst moment. You hit more than rock bottom, right?
Mhm.
So how was it like at this point in your life? How did you perceive? How did you live? How did you feel? What was it to be at rock bottom?
Brutal, brutal. There's a sublime, profound self hatred when you get to the level that I got to. And again, I'm not alone. I was on the streets with other individuals that were at the level that I was. The difference, and it doesn't mean mine worse or better. My difference is that I was so high. I got out of college, worked for 3M, worked for Kodak. I was making $50,000 a year in 1985. Okay. 22 years old, wearing Hickey Freeman suits, Allen Edmond wingtip shoes, silk braces, which are what you would call suspenders, with a silk bow tie. I looked good, I smelled good, I talked good. I've modeled, I was in a movie. I mean, I've done some incredible things. And then I relapse. And for the next 21 years, I'm in and out of treatment centers, jail, and penitentiaries. And so I have that regret. I didn't grow up in the hood. I didn't grow up in this environment, this world. But believe me, I put the mask on to try to be accepted within that community because if you're not, it can be dangerous because they can't trust you. Okay. So my thing was I abhorred me. And sometimes I feel that's too light, self-hatred. So my life consisted of predominantly one emotion: fear. Fear. I was always in fear. And the question is, fear of what? Well, I was in fear of maybe drug dealers I had ripped off. I was in fear of the police. I was in fear of the court system. I was in fear of someone I had gotten into an altercation with. But the predominant fear I had was fear of me. Fear of me. I was afraid, what decision am I going to make today that's going to make me feel less than? That's going to make me feel that I am not a worthy member of this society or this community, that I am not and have no self worth. I was afraid of me because I put together a long succession of really bad decisions for me and for my loved ones. Fear.
Everyone who is listening now and who really wants to get a copy, really get a copy of Becoming Ken, One Black Man's Journey from Ivy League to Prison and Back Again. Published by Thought Leaders Press 2025. Fear of oneself. But before we go into this, in Becoming Ken, for everyone
Mhm.
who is listening, he will actually reveal how you actually best behave in prison. But you gotta buy the book. Why do you think that? And I think it doesn't just apply to yourself, but also to us ourselves.
Mhm.
That our biggest fear is basically looking into the our own mirror, our own self. What is it? Unpack this. Why?
Because we got to take, then we have to take responsibility. The reason that I was in prison wasn't because my dad beat me. It wasn't because my father shot my mom. It wasn't because I was put up for adoption. It wasn't their fault. Yes, it gave me pain, but how I dealt with that pain, that less than feeling, that low self esteem was on me. That's one of the most beautiful things that I realized and understood. I can see one of the things that truth did, it took away the excuse. It took away the excuse. I have no excuses for my behavior. Remember, I know every reason why I did everything I did. Okay. And I've also forgiven myself. That was a big one. I've forgiven myself. I understood I was broken. I understood why I did these things, but I'm not going to use antecedents to justify trying to kill someone on 3 occasions. I've gone to kill someone on 3 occasions. I'm not going to justify it for being a pimp of teenage girls. There's no justification for that. I'm not going to do it to justify kidnapping someone and keeping them against their will. I can't justify. I'm not going to justify it for the armed robberies. I'm not going to do it. I did that because I chose to do that. That was the best decision under the influence of drugs or in pursuit of money to do more drugs. But I stayed in that addiction and I chose to relapse. I went to 14 inpatient treatment centers. You repeat that, 14. And after each and every one of them, I relapsed until the 14th one. And I've been clean and sober now for 21 years. So it's important that the audience hears that I don't have any excuses. I have no rationalizations. I have no intellectualizations of my behavior. I understand it. And because I understand it, it has allowed me to take off those other labels, ex con, drug addict, and to become kin. That's what the book's about. It's becoming kin. That's why I named it that. I'm just Ken Miller now. But before, I was drug addict, or I was one of my street names, or I was ex con, or I was thug, or I was kidnapper, whatever you wanted to label me. And the courts labeled me, believe that, because I did time for those labels. But I'm not that person anymore. I am a kind and gentle man today. That's what I am.
Are there any moments, especially now, looking back,
Mhm.
that you face some dragons, or that you still struggle in one way or another? How do you deal with the past? Because the
Well,
past never leaves us to some extent.
okay, that's a great question, and I'm going to answer it like this. So I get arrested in 2004. It's a big part of the book. There's a pivot moment where I have a conversation with God. In October, I get arrested September 22nd, 2004. Sometime in October, I have a conversation with God, which then gives me courage and a path. I go to prison January 2025. I'm in jail before that. Then I go to prison for 3 years. And I make a decision. I'm going to work on the intellectual, physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects. Hope I didn't give away what you wanted to say that's in the book. So I work on those. I get out and I think I'm well. I think I'm well because I've been clean now 3 years. I've worked on all these things. And then someone calls me a bitch. And if you have to edit it, that's on you. But that's the word that was used towards me. And where I come from, that word is a trigger word. That means that you're less than, you are weak. Therefore, I will take advantage of you. You will buy me commissary, you'll clean my cell, or you'll provide sexual services to me in the penitentiary if I call you a bitch. Well, I'm outside, I'm in the civilian world, and someone calls me, but I have an automatic script I have to play out, which is physical. Because if you're in the penitentiary, somebody calls, that means they want you got to fight, or you got to do what they tell you to do. That's your two choices. And when that person did that, and it was my nephew, he didn't know the power of that word. He did not know that. And I remember I called my brother up. I have a half brother for my father's. This is my adoptive father's family. And I said, Mike, you got to talk to Mike Jr. This is what he said. He understood it. He knows community, that community. And what I'm coming back to is that over the next 5, 6 years, there were many other things that I had to do to get well, to get where I'm at today. And I really want to say this, Yannick. As of maybe a year or two ago, I'm cool. I am well. I am well. And people say, oh, that's a lot of ego. No, it's not ego. It's a self assessment. I do life well. I have no fear. I make good decisions for my wife and my family. I am a good friend. I am a loyal colleague, a loyal friend, and I give back. Because I am well, now I can give back. One of the one of the things that concerns me is that some people are working on getting well their whole life. They're so busy on fixing themselves that they don't have the capacity because you only have so much capacity, time and money to give out. Oh, I'm still working on that. I'm still working on myself. And I'm not saying you can't. Remember, it took me probably 10 or 11 years, but I'm cool now. And so there's nothing, literally nothing that I can think of as I sit here today that I'm working on or that I feel like I need to, or let me give you one other one. So you remember you will get feedback external that people will say, you might want to work on this. And then you'll have that internal. And I don't get it external. This is something I tell people. I like never make amends or apologies. It's very rare. Why? Because I don't mess with people. I treat people with respect. You treat people with respect. That's a whole nother topic we can go into, but it's a whole nother topic. It's my next book. My next book is on respect and disrespect. But I don't treat people poorly. So I don't inside, because that's usually the first one. Oh man, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. I need to make an apology, and I'll do it. And I will make the apology, but I do it very rare. And then I don't get external. 'Cause I used to get a lot of that. Oh, what's the name's mad at you? Or you might want to talk to XYZ, or I can't believe you did this, which is an external person saying that there's something you may want to look at that you may need to make an amends or apology on. Okay. So
Thank you so much for sharing really your story. It's such a powerful story. Really, everyone who is listening, really go on Amazon or any major bookstore and
mhm.
get a copy of Becoming Ken, One Black Man's Journey from Ivy League to Prison and Back, published by Thought Leaders Press 2025. It's really, really humbling to have you here, to read your story, and really to look the impact that you have on myself and really on the world, because this story is, I never really encountered a story like this. So I have to say it's really tremendously touching, and I just hope that it will be a huge success because it's also very powerfully written. How come, and what was it that made you also write such a prolific book? Because your writing style, the way you put things, very straightforward but also very profound in a very telling and also descriptive manner. Where did you learn that, and how was the process in and of itself? What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
So first of all, I hate to write. I hate writing. I love reading, but I hate writing. So what I did is I had a ghostwriter, started 3 years ago this month. And what we did was we met like weekly for like 4 hours at a time. Ended up with 65 hours of me talking. You only got such a small part. When the second ghostwriter got done, he said, Ken, there's two more books in this. I've had a lot of experiences. Okay. But I talk about experience, but I also talk about concepts. I talk about fear. I talk about courage. I talk about resentment. I talk about forgiveness. 'Cause that's more important to me than the story. The stories keep you interested. The stories go, wow, I'm glad that didn't happen to me, or I can't believe he did that, or whatever. That's fine. That's fine. And they're great from the stage, and I can tell stories because they happen and they're real. And I tell people who don't think it real, you can go to court view for the state of Nevada, state of Washington, state of California, and you'll see it in writing. Okay, from court view. But the key thing is that I still have more. Almost more important. So anyway, I wrote it. There was 65 hours. This has been digested down. And then I had a third group or editor, the press, Thought Leaders Press, cleaned it up. And then I read it, of course. I made a few more adjustments here and there because you have to understand a story of such as mine. I had to change names because some of them were literally victims of my behavior. Some of them were innocent parties that I talked about things that are very sensitive. And so I had to protect them. There's certain people I could not talk about at all for legal reasons. I can't even discuss them. There's certain victims and or people in my life I cannot legally talk about, which is fine. I have no problem. Again, I did my time. I've made my amends. But there's, like I said, there's a lot more that has not. I liked the way the book came out. I liked some of the lessons at the end of each chapter. You can learn certain things. There's things that you can ponder yourself because, again, and this is probably the most important question, why did I write it? Why? And the question is, number one, I've had so many people, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. My fervent desire is that, not just put it out there. I hope they make a movie out of it because I think it would be an incredible movie. Okay. Doesn't have to be some huge movie. You can go straight to video for all I care, or straight to Netflix or whoever, but make a movie out of this. Because it is really, it's a very unusual and unique story because again, the Ivy League, I'm in a point when they ranked me intelligence wise, 0.5%. So 99, supposedly more intelligent. At least I wasn't at age 17 than 99.5% of the population. That's a national merit scholar. Okay, great. And then to go so high, have so much capability. I could have done some stuff in Hollywood. I mean, just some stuff. I've done modeling, all these things that were positive in my life. And then to spend 21 years as a homeless addict and also as a convicted felon, 3-time convicted felon. 3 times I've been to the penitentiary. And then to come back, that's the miracle because Yanik, want I am a rarity in that I came back from the level that I was. Most of the time, we die in our addiction. We spend the rest of our life in and out of prison, or we get killed, or we commit suicide. I lost 23 people in less than 2 years. 23 individuals dead that I knew on the streets, male and female, suicide, cirrhosis, esophageal hemorrhaging, murder, dead, dead. Cirrhosis of the liver, heart blew up from smoking crack cocaine. So 26 years old, that gentleman, QB. So, I mean, and like you said, so anyway, there's two more. I got three more books coming out this year, I hope. I shouldn't say I hope. I was coming, I'm starting in September on writing my next books. But I got three more, and they will be a lot faster. AI is incredible. It's still my story, but I can use AI to assist me instead of getting the ghostwriters because I can still talk and then have the AI take my speaking. I'm not going to do 65 hours. Can't tell you that.
It's incredible. Was it also to some extent like therapy to write this book, or was this already, you were already past that stage?
I was past that stage. The therapy, that's a great question. The therapy wasn't the writing of the books. The therapy is having the courage to publish it and then speak from the stage about the thing. We haven't even talked about shame. That's one of the key components of the book is shame and the concept of shame. And I talk about shame and guilt because they're closely connected, kissing cousins, but they're very different. Guilt is I did, shame is I am. And I was shame based. People predominantly deflect from shame, not guilt, shame. Okay. Because I'm shame based. I hurt. I'm less than. I am. Therefore, I will engage in this behavior and will continue a lot of the shame based behavior. So that was the big one that I had to overcome. And I began that in the penitentiary and continued it when I got out. And now it's all it's out there for the world to see. And yeah, I was going to mention it. The shame-based behavior is I was a male prostitute, and that was the lowest of the low on the streets. The lowest of the low to be a man, committing sexual acts with men for money or drugs. And that's what I did for years, for years. And I hated myself for that. Hated myself for that. I tried to commit suicide twice. So, it was easy. And I'm so angry. And remember, I can't trust myself. I can't trust myself to engage and continue doing in this. behavior because I want crack so bad. Okay. So bad. But all I have to do is stop doing the crack and then forgiving myself for those actions and then move on and use it as a way to help others. So I speak about it from the stage and I help others. That's why I wrote the book. The book is so I can speak more. I can do more podcasts and I can do more speaking from the stage so that I can empower people, hopefully, to take away the power of the secrets, take away the power of those secrets, take away that shame based self talk that you're engaging with, take away the scripts that you feel you have to play out when someone says or does something to you.
What role played your faith in addressing shame?
And addressing shame, well, first of all, it addressed everything. And the faith was this: one of the most important things I came to realize once engaged and built a relationship with what I call God is that I needed a spiritual presence that would modify my behavior and modify my will. That was the key. You can talk about how much faith you have, you can talk about how much you've read in the Bible or the Quran or whatever, but has it modified your behavior, present and future? Will it modify? And I had behavior that needed to be modified. So, what does it mean? What it means is I have a will. It's called my will. And then there's God's will. Can number one, can I get them in alignments? We call it congruence. 99% of the time, my will and God's will are in 100% alliance or alignment, congruence. 1% of the time, I am left with a question of whether I want to engage in my will or God's will. And what do I do at that point? Because my will is based on usually two things when it's in opposition to God's will. I'm seeking pleasure or I'm running away from pain. Okay. And one of the key components is I talk about a little bit in the book is having a strong understanding of pain. What a gift pain is. It's a gift from God. Okay. So I go into prayer and meditation and I ask God, what is your will? What's the right thing to do in this? Not what's going to be the most pleasurable for me or it's going to minimize my pain or discomfort, but what's the right thing to do? And then I ask God to give me the courage to do it. And He does. He does. He gives me the courage. He gives me what is courage? Courage is the willingness to accept the possibility of pain. That's all it is. Willingness to accept the possibility of pain. Yeah, I'm going to do it. It might hurt, but I'm still going to do it. I'm going to accept that possibility. Because many times you have fear, which is the anticipation of pain, and then you do the item or the event or the objective or whatever it may be, and you find that there was no pain. My boss called me into the office a week ago, and I was afraid he was going to fire me. I go in there and he wants to give me a raise. This is an example. Now, I don't have a boss. I am the boss. You see? But I had courage. I went to the meeting. There was times I had things like that come up with me. I never showed up because I know I was getting fired, or I know they're going to put me in jail, or I know I'm going to get sentenced. There's times I always had a failure to appear. That's a court failure to appear for a court hearing. I knew I didn't want to go in at that time. Wasn't willing. And then I'd go, and a lot of times, all right, Mr. Miller, you're doing well in drug court. Have a no. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Man, I swore I was going to get arrested. I knew they knew, and I love to
What
laugh.
if
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I apologize.
what if you don't have a faith, a God that you can somehow find direction?
Mhm.
Because that's we also have to face the reality that that's also a possibility that a lot of people don't have that, right? So what will you say, what should you do if you don't have faith, if you don't have a God that you can trust?
Okay, that's fine. That's easy. I have no problem with that question. You have to have integrity. What's integrity? Adherence to an internal code of conduct or ethics. But most people don't have an internal code of conduct. They have never actualized or have never enumerated this code of conduct that they want for themselves. How do I want to be known by? How do I want to be lived by? What are the good qualities that are going to be my code of conduct? Let's write them down. I want to be loyal. I want to be faithful. I want to be tolerant. I want to be loving. I want to be kind. I want to be gentle. Put them down, articulate them, say them out loud, put them on a piece of paper. That's my internal. Now, can I have integrity to adhere to that internal code of conduct? Because there'll be things that'll be choices that will give you more pleasure than to be loyal to my wife, to be loyal to your partner. There'll be times where you will have a choice where it would not be tolerant of others. Because what I want to do is cuss you out or threaten you. But the tolerant, you've made a mistake. Let's talk about it, or let me just accept that that's the mistake you've made and let's move on. Okay. That's what you do if you don't. What I have and what many people of faith, but there's a lot of people, I'm just being my truth, a lot of people of faith or profess faith, but that faith has not modified their behavior. It's like what faith without works, faith without modification of behavior is just air. Okay. So that's what I would do. Integrity.
Thank you so much. That is so powerful. So you also give away for each chapter really an advice what to do really,
Mhm,
and it's so
mhm.
powerful. Now I don't want to give it away because I want people to really buy a book, Becoming Ken: One Black Man's Journey from Ivy League to Prison and Back Again, published by Thought Leaders Press 2025. So really get a copy now. Integrity. Give us your best advice to start living a life of integrity.
Well, I pretty much said it, but I'll add a little to it. You need to put down, well, no, this is what you need to do. You need to go inside and think. One of our difficulties in today's society is we have lost the ability to think. And what do you mean by that? There's a phenomenal book called Deep Work by Cal Newport, and it's about thinking deep, vertical, deep, as opposed to horizontal. We're thinking in these 30-second sound bites. We're thinking in these Facebook reels. We're thinking in a YouTube video that's a 3 minute or a 5 minute or even a 10 or 15 minute YouTube. We don't have any depth to our thinking. And it's difficult for people to think deeply, many people, because they don't know how. And I teach this with the guys I work with. I teach. And what we do is we peel away the layers so you can then understand you. Because that's the problem is you don't understand you. It's not your wife. It's not your boss. It's not the judge. It's you. And one of the most beautiful things when you understand it's you can do something about it. You can't change the judge. I'll never forget the first time I got sentenced for a felony. And I'm gonna come back to this, but first time I went to sentence, I can talk just like I'm talking with you now. Not to the depth, but I could talk. This is 1991, September 1991. And I'm in front of the judge, and he said, "Mr. Miller, do you got anything to say?" My whole life, if you had asked me that question, I could talk for 20 minutes. And at that moment, I realized there's nothing I can say. That decision is in him. And there's nothing I can say that's probably going to change, literally. Because, the prosecutor did their thing, my defense attorney. And it was the first time in life I was left without words. Okay. Going back, what do we do to be able to get to a point where we can grow, that we can grow as people and as an individual? But it comes down to, I'm so strong on this one. It comes down to seeing truth and thinking deeply. So I work with men. This is how I work with men, and this has worked for me. We start with the manifestation. You say the manifestation, that's the showing of the emotion. Because I get them all the time. Oh, I got into this fight, or I got into this argument. That's the manifestation. That's the action. So the action is on the outside. That's the first layer. Okay, behind the action, and I'm talking to him. What'd you feel? What'd you feel? Wow, I was angry. Okay. Angry is not the primary emotion. Behind all anger, I've been doing this for 15 years, and until someone can show me another anger that's not based on fear, I'll change my thoughts on that. Okay, so we know, 'cause we've been working together for years, probably, that behind all action, all behind all anger is fear. Remember? Fear, fight, flight, freeze, or accept. Those are the four things you can do with fear. And this is the fight. Okay, so you had fear, which is the future anticipation of pain. What pain were you perceiving? This is hard. Now we're going deeper. We've gone from action to anger, okay, which is a very prevalent one for, let's say, violence or action in the violence realm, to fear, which is the underlying emotion. Now we need to identify what is the pain. And this takes time. Took me years to work through some of these. And then the other thing I always say when I'm at that level, what was the self talk? What was the self talk? What were you saying to yourself internally? Because you're always talking to yourself. And then underneath that is the last one. What's the core issue? What's the core issue? I can't do this for you. I can work you through, help you through, but usually they'll have to think about it for a couple weeks, come back and say, "Hey, I realized I've been thinking about it. I was thinking about the situation, and I believe my core issue is this." My core issue has always been, it's only one core issue for me. I'm going to die alone. I'm going to be abandoned. That's been my core issue since I was a child. And then grows to where I have a gun and I'm robbing you. Okay. And
This
so
is
anyway,
so powerful.
that's what I do. That's how that works. Again,
This is
deep
so
thinking.
powerful.
Yeah.
This is so powerful. Thank you so much, Ken, really for sharing. We just could go on and on. And, based on that, I just remember, and it's also in my case that, I mean, the only fear that I still have, I think it's really is this fundamental fear of always, you know, your parents separating or divorcing, that was in my case when I was young. That was my core fear, that really hold me back, and I think still is to some extent here, right? There is just always this kind of fear because we know biologically but also psychologically that we are the product of two people, right?
Mhm.
And once they split up, then somehow that implicitly, at least, or in fact explicitly, means that, well, you are basically just a byproduct, right? And that's something that's really deep in our psyche, I will even say, you know
It'd be interesting, and I've never done this, and I may do this. I've been talking about doing this. Is with permission, I'm going to do a mentor session with one of my mentees and show people how I mentor. So I'm writing my third book this year, really my fourth book. I have three more I'm writing. Is is going to be mentoring in communities of color. That's the name of the book. Then I'm writing a book on fundraising because I'm a fundraising subject matter expert, and then I'm writing a book on respect and disrespect. Okay, those are the three more books I'm writing this year. But one of the things I love to do because again, I'm not a trained psychologist, psychiatrist, anything. All I know is I'm a man, a black man that has worked with other black men that it's been a value added to them.
100%.
Okay? That I know. You can't take that. I don't have the degrees or certificates, but I've done a lot of reading, 1,100 books, nonfiction, and I have a
Applied
lot.
psychologist. You are an
Yeah,
applied psychologist. I
you
mean,
can
there is
call it.
no doubt.
What I am is, this is another one, Yanik. Hear this. Every man that I mentor, I tell them I love them. On a call just like this, I love you. You know that, Chris. I love you. Xavier, you know I love you. And it for most of them, it took them years before they could say that back to me. Okay. And I do. I'm willing to do whatever I can. I've done things financially. I've done things where I've been on calls for 3, 4 hours. I am so grateful. People say, they talk about in the programs, I'm so grateful. I'm like, how do you show it? And remember, this is my true belief. I've got a calling. I have a skill set that many people don't have. First, I have a skill set I can stand in front of thousands of people and talk. Okay, that's a skill set without freezing, or fear. That's a skill set. I have a skill set to work with men. I've had grown men sit down across from me on in person or on a Zoom call with tears in their eyes, crying. Why? Because a dream came true. When I mentor men, first thing we do in that first meeting, I introduce myself, tell a little bit of my story, but I said, I have one goal and one purpose and one responsibility to you. And they're like, what's that? And I say, it is to engender your dream. What's your dream? And then I shut up. I've had men sit there for 20 minutes because someone has taken away the power for them to dream. Their family, their teachers, their colleagues, their partners said, you can't have that dream. And I'm here to say, you can. I'm going to do everything I can to help you to engender that dream. And then when the dream comes true, it's tears of gratitude, tears of joy, because it's not easy. That's why it's a dream, it's an aspiration, it's the top of the mountain. And a lot of times I say, let's enjoy this today. What's our next dream? But let's run with this. Let's eat. Or a lot. I've done this in person too, and people wonder why you do this, Ken. And I said, man, that's why. Why do I talk on stage? So when I come off a stage and a woman's coming up to me and has tears in her eyes because she said, I've never heard anybody talk truth like you. And I've had this secret. And I'm like, you can talk to me about it. You can talk to someone. You can talk to me. I'll never talk to anybody else about it. I don't even know you. Or you can speak with one person and you can take away that power of that secret. Yeah, I talked about. I got raped. I was a man. I've been raped by another man. Yeah, I've turned tricks on the street. Yeah, I know what it feels like to be dirty and take a 2-hour shower and still not feel clean. Been there, done that. But I can sit here and talk to you about it. I've taken away the power of that emotion. See, what you do is when you deal with this past, is that the emotions that you were that would either always come up or you were afraid that they would come up. I can talk about any event and not have negative emotions come up. Not anger, not resentment, not guilt, not shame. That's a beautiful place to be.
You are the best testimony, really, that your history or past doesn't determine your future. Beautifully said. So, everyone who is listening, really go on any major book shop and get a copy of Becoming Ken, One Black Man's Journey from Ivy League to Prison and Back Again, published by Thought Leaders Press 2025. Last question. What makes you truly now feel alive and connected?
Man, there's so many. I would playing with my grandchildren. I'm one. My wife laying her head on my chest in bed. That's two. Coming off a stage, knowing you've been a value added, getting emails or being on a Zoom meeting and getting a thank you or appreciation. Um, yeah, those that'll work. Just doing kind acts, looking for nothing in return. That makes me feel good. I'm not, you just, Yanik, you don't, maybe you do, but you don't understand how blessed I feel. I should be dead. I've been put in the hospital. I've had guns pulled on me. I've had knives put to my chest, just ready to be pushed in because I disrespected a gentleman named Sheik on the streets of Reno. I've been there, been there. Okay. But not only that, but to be who I am today. And I like me. You say, what happens when you wake up? Man, I can't wait. I didn't know this was going to happen. This has been awesome, Yannick. You've asked some incredible questions and allowed me a platform to share some truths. And I hope I've affected people positively. If anybody wants to contact me, LinkedIn, my handle is Ken Miller 84, and I answer all of them. Everyone. I will answer. I will talk to you. I'll communicate with you on LinkedIn. I'd give you my email. It's too long. My phone number is 907-250-8488. I'm not afraid of a phone call. I mean, that's who I am today. I'm protected. I'm blessed. If I was to pass away tomorrow, I'm cool. I'm cool. I'm good. But I have a lot more people to touch, hopefully in a positive manner. The main thing I would like, if you want to read the book, great. I love to speak. That's what I want to do. I will speak for free or I'll speak for pay. Doesn't matter to me. I make over $500,000. That part, I spoke last month to talk about hiring ex-offenders. Cost me $3,000 to go up there and speak. But I did it because I wanted those HR managers to understand that you can hire someone like me and you'll get one of the best employees you've ever had. Because the people who did hire me when I came out of the penitentiary this last time and got a fantastic employee. Okay. That's my wish. So thank you again. And thank you to the audience for taking time out of your calendar or your schedule to listen to something like this. This show is phenomenal. Continue listening to Yanik's show because he'll have other guests. And if I didn't resonate with you, there will be someone who will. I tell people this all the time, and I know we're wrapping up. I say, sing your song. Sing your song. Okay? You don't be me. You know, sing your song and share with others your value. Thank you.
Ken Miller, thank you so much for being truly a blessing to myself and really to the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ken Miller. That's why knowledge matters. Make your life a masterpiece. Visit now programs.d-ykm.com. Meant to make